Is this thing on? What is happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic Sunday evening, wrapping up a weekend in style. And turn this fan down. It is muggy as hell out here. Anyway, checking in. So we did a quick live video from the drag strip on Hemi Day 426. That would have been on Friday. Definitely was fun. Density out there. Get some light going on in here. Team Mopar hollering out, what's up, man? What's up? So, yeah, grabbed the car, took it down to the drag strip in some not awesome DA. Turns out the first pass was made with a density altitude of about 16 to 1700. Yeah, that was pretty fun. 84 degrees, pretty decent humidity. It's just still fun getting the car down the drag strip, though. Went 1080, and then for the rest of the night, just proceeded to go 1070s all night long with a density altitude of about 12 to 1300 all night long. So that'll at least give you an idea of how the car was running and what we were up to celebrating Hemi Day on Friday. All in all, I can't really complain too much about this car so much. I put a two-part video together about, my thoughts on best practices for hot rodding your Mopar Hellcat derived contraption, but to be honest with you, I haven't done a video about my thoughts on my car. I haven't put one of those, things I hate videos, things I love videos. I just don't know if I need to do that, although that typically does kind of fall into line with what most folks like to see. So I'll probably end up doing something like that here pretty soon. We're coming up on 6 months with Revlon over here. So, yeah, kind of looking forward to bringing you guys an update video on my thoughts on the car. And it's funny because, I can basically do that now and then I'll expand on it in the video, but my thoughts on the car really haven't changed since I did my thoughts on the Hellcat way early on when I started making videos. A lot of those videos are fairly unwatchable. Believe me, I get it, I know. Hang on, this thing's freezing me out now. But it's one of those funny things. There's some things that I would like to see a little bit differently with the car, things that I would like to do to the car. And to be honest with you, none of them have anything to do with making more horsepower out of the thing. Really, it has more to do with just livening the car up a little bit. And I know it sounds kind of funny. How do you liven up a car that already has 700 horsepower? Why would you need to, right? Well, two things, weight and gearing. Those are the two things that really do kind of hold the car back from feeling like it's got 700 horsepower. And I guess the way I can describe it is like this. I remember back when 700 horsepower was 700 horsepower, but typically the platform that 700 horsepower was found, it weighed about anywhere from 700 to 1,000 pounds less than this car. And even with the 8-speed automatic and the gear multiplication that it has with a 262 gear, it still can leave you a little bit wanting. So at least in terms of just the overall feel of the car, just when you're driving it around. The good thing about the 262 gear, though, is that it's safer than the 309 in that, I guess it just doesn't break as often. Oh, dang, man, hang on. It just doesn't break like the 309 will in some cases. But the reality is the 262 gear, it's a good overall gear and it keeps the car fairly manageable on the street, but it just doesn't have that, freak you out sensation that 700 horsepower really should kind of give you. So anyway, though, I can't really complain about how the car runs in terms of numbers, though. So on one hand, my thoughts haven't changed too much since the very first time I drove a Hellcat. But the funny thing about it is that in a lot of ways, I actually like the car more than I thought that I would, and that to me says a lot. Especially considering the fact that I've driven so many very high horsepower cars. A stock Hellcat, oddly enough, you would almost think it's a little bit more pedestrian. In a lot of ways it is, but it's still a heck of a lot of fun. And believe me when I tell you, there ain't nothing slow about a car that runs 10s in just about any conditions. So at any rate, let me get in here real quick. I want to say hi to everybody that's checking in. Hollering back out at Mopar saying, what's up? Sherrod in second. What's up, man? I like it. Marcel saying, what's up? Good timing. I like it. Slime Cuda saying, Sunday chat. Yep, coming in on Sunday. Let's see. Mopar saying, he kind of old in his hood. Shaker is installed. Shaker Grand Cherokee is beating the streets. I like that. Saying your runs are excellent as well. Thank you very much. Michael Johnson saying great numbers. I would agree. Thank you very much. Sean E saying good evening, B. Good evening, Sean. TJ saying, let's see what she'll do with a little shot of nitrous. Yeah, you know what? The thoughts crossed my mind. You know, funny thing you should mention that. You know, a lot of guys are moving to nitrous with these cars right now. And for good reason. I'm not going to say that it's safer than just throwing boost at it. But the problem is it's a lot easier for guys, believe it or not, to put a nitrous tune together than it is to try to tune one of these things on a higher boost. And the reason for that, again, it's the lower density altitudes that you end up dealing with during the fall, winter, and even into some of the spring months, depending on where you live. These things are heavy, and, you know, typical normal logic doesn't really play with Mopars. But anyway, you've seen a lot of guys throwing nitrous at these cars. I don't have any desire to throw nitrous at this thing. However, it will be one of the first cars, my 392 included with that did not get nitrous, at least at some point in its life. I say few, but really the last 3 or 4 haven't had nitrous. So I'm kind of slipping up a little bit. Eric's saying, what's up? What's up, Eric? Dr. Differential is in. B. Mason, what's up, brother? Good to chat tonight. Bummed about my track night Friday. You'll get it, man. That's why they call it test and tune, man. You just got to see what that thing's going to want, see what it's going to take to get it sorted out. Could end up being that you need a built transmission, ramp up the quality of the clutches. Who knows? But you're not too far away from your goals, I think, just yet. In fact, I think you're a lot closer than you think. It's just going to take a little bit more testing, a little bit more tuning, and a little bit more fiddling with that thing to get it right where you need to be. But considering the power that you're making, I think you're right on point. Sean E is saying a 309 gear would be more fun. You know, thoughts crossed my mind more than once. Let's face it. The Red Eye, you can option with a 309 gear. The Demon is, well, you can't get it unless you get a 309 gear. So, you know, really for me, in a lot of ways, 309 just kind of seems like a good idea based on the power levels that I'm basically going to keep this car at. I'm not really going to turn the wick up on this thing too high. If it gets anything, it might get an upper pulley, a pinned crank. Doubt very seriously it's ever going to go on E85, although I may have an E85 tune on tap just in case I want to run E85. But the majority of its time is probably going to be spent running either 93 octane or, you know, 100 or 104 octane, just whatever's available at the drag strip. I'm not overly concerned with trying to drag a number out of this car per se. The main idea with this thing is just to put something together that is a riot to drive and that is a ton of fun, and that will go tens no matter what track I take it to. That's really more the idea behind this car. And you know, I'm not trying to set the world on fire with this thing. Unfortunately, these cars do have a limit. They have a ceiling, in my opinion anyway. I know there's guys that have gotten these things into the 8s and all of that. But if it's a street car and you're going to leave the interior intact and you're not going to gut it, throw maybe a lightweight seat in the thing and, you know, really gram the thing down to the nth degree, you're weight limited. Not only does that weight hurt you just in terms of generic acceleration, you know, I can throw a baseball a lot farther than I can throw a 10-pound bowling ball. But the reality is that there is a lot more stress on every part, just like throwing a baseball or a bowling ball. You know, if I try to throw a baseball, I can probably do it quite a few times before my shoulder flies off. I try to do it once with a bowling ball, and you'd be dragging my ass to the emergency room. So, you know, it's the same idea with these cars. You got to strip not just 100 pounds or 200 pounds out of the car. We're talking about 500, 600, 700 pounds have got to come out of this thing before it can really be considered safe to start getting real aggressive with either tunes or different boost implements, you know, turbos, things like that. Yeah, you can get there. Again, don't get me wrong, there's ways to get there, but again, the amount of work you're going to have to put into the car and the money you're going to have to spend to take weight out of it. You could have just built a different platform and, you know, just built you a drag only car really at that point. So I don't know. For me, we'll see how the whole thing turns out. But as this year progresses into next year, be a few changes made to her, but nothing too far out of the realm of normalcy. I'll put it to you like that. Eric Martin asking, how do I get in touch with you to spec a cam for my Scat Pack and manifold porting? Give Pikes Performance a shout. 832-370-0791. They can they'll take your information down for me and I will get you squared away. Michael Johnson, as far as gear ratio, is there a middle ground between stock and 309? Man, I wish. In fact, there's a gear ratio that I don't even understand why Mopar doesn't offer, especially for the 392 and 5.7 guys, and that would be a 331. And that kind of segues me into a bit of a beef that I have with Mopar with the 1320. The 1320 to me is just a Scat Pack core with some gadgets and gizmos lifted off of the Demon. It's marketing. It's not an actual purpose-built track car. It's got some software that works, but it just lacks the hardware. And the hardware is what makes the thing go down the track. Look, I'm sorry, but my SRT 392, the heaviest of the group, right? That car with nothing more than a tune, a tire, and a cat delete, and again, full weight car went 1139 and ran a string of 1140s. That's with no real weight reduction. So I get that it's a neat car and all that, but what they really could have done is one of two things. One, put an aluminum block in it, make it special, give that car a 426. Make it reasonable to say that it's an upgrade over a Scat Pack core. The second thing would have been to develop a 331 or a 327 or a first quarter of the number chain up, some type of gear ratio that actually differentiates that car from the rest of the pack. They didn't. And so they didn't, and because they didn't, I cannot, it is driving me nuts to say this because I was such a freaking honk about Mopar not doing anything for the grassroots guy, for the NA guy. But it's weird, when they did something, they just didn't do enough. So anyway, to answer your question, no, they didn't. Sorry for the rant, and I'll keep trucking along here. See, Alan's saying, wouldn't you think SRT would use optimal gearing from the get-go? It's like a two-valve Mustang that needs to be geared out the ass. You know, the funny thing about it is that it's not like the car is improperly geared. And I think a little bit too much is given in terms of importance to gear ratios, especially when we're talking about a vehicle that has an 8-speed transmission. There's a lot of room in that transmission to manipulate just the right ratios, regardless of what the rear ratio is. In fact, because of that 8-speed, it makes choosing a higher ratio gear a little bit daunting, because a small increase in gear ratio yields big time results because there is so much gear to work with in that 8-speed. Now, all that being said, anecdotally, Hellcats with 309s are just more lively to drive. And in practice, I can tell you with all the time that I spent with the Demon, that is the happiest freaking car you have ever driven in your life. If you ever get a chance to drive a Demon or a Hellcat with a 309 gear, because I'll be damn honest with you guys, there is not any honest difference that you would be able to tell in terms of power between a good running Hellcat on 93 octane and a Demon on 93 octane, or a Red Eye on 93 octane for that matter. If you get a chance to get behind the wheel of one of those cars, they are the happiest Hellcat you've ever driven in your life. They always just are so much fun. And to me, that's reason enough to throw the 309 in the car. Now, there is a spot in terms of power where the 309 just does not make any sense. You know, you start making upwards, like on a Mustang dyno of say 850, 900 to the rear wheels, you're getting very close to that 1,000 horsepower mark basically on a dyno jet. you're going to need to go back down to the 262 just because you're going to burn through first gear way too quickly. Plus, you start running into problems with predictive shifting. Transmission tuning becomes something that you become intimately involved with at that point. And yeah, it's just the way that it is. Plus, the higher the gear ratio, the more tendency that the pinion is going to have to try to climb that ring gear under hard acceleration, and that can cause a host of pinion angle issues and also puts more wear and tear on half shafts. So there is kind of a happy medium there, and I think that any of the red eye or demon equivalents, you're pretty much at the limit of what that gear can handle in that housing in something that weighs this much and is making that much power. I think if you keep the power just a little bit on the lower side, enjoy the gear, throw the tires on it, make some noise, and go out and run some low 10s and some low DA and just have fun with it. Sam's checking in saying, yo, B-Mason. Yo, Sam, what's up, man? Let's see. I'd say much harder than AD or W truck. Man, I'm not picking up what you're putting down, man. Help me out with that. Show me Mopar. Got the shades on and the arm flex saying, good evening. Having a ton of fun with the Scat Challenger B-Mason sorted. I like it. I run the car a lot. 8 Mile Quarter road course. Thinking about the simple diff brace. Just cuz. Thoughts? I say go for it. I'm running one on mine. I'm running the extreme diff brace on this thing. And, if you're concerned about it, I'd say go for it. But really at that power level and what you're doing with the car, I don't think you're going to run into too many issues. Thankfully, by the way. But it doesn't hurt to have the diff brace on. The only downside to it is a bit of a pain in the ass to put on. So if you've got the tools to do it, I say go for it. If you get the extreme brace, any of the new performance braces, not including that two-piece contraption that they just came out with, you're going to need some thin wall sockets to make that work so you can get everything torqued down properly. But that being said, I don't know. At your power level, it's really not needed. And if you're concerned, I say do it. But I don't think you have too much to worry about. Team Mopar is asking, do you think roller rockers are a worthwhile upgrade at the cost of over $1,000 just to be able to rev a little bit higher? No! Get yourself a set of stanky tie bars and collars if you're worried about that. You don't need to go with the Jessel setup. You don't need to even worry about any of that. It's far too complicated. And believe me when I tell you, you've got plenty of guys with Hellcats that are spooling these things up to well over 7,000 RPM, 72, 7,300 RPM actually, and aren't running into any issues. Main problem you're going to have is the rocker actually moving around just a little bit at higher RPMs, but honestly, I haven't seen too many of them in up to about 6,300 RPM that have run into any problems. I'd say if you're going to spool it up any harder than that, say 65 plus, put a set of stankies on it just to be on the safe side. Tell them I sent you. Slime Cuda, what's up with the D100 search? The search continues. I am having a hell of a time sourcing a decent one, and realistically the search has been put on hold for just a little bit, mainly due to it's just been real busy with work, haven't had a chance to really even think about it. But quite honestly, the right one is going to have to come up, and when the right one is ready, the right one will show up, man. But so far, no joy. But hope springs eternal. We'll see how it comes, like I say, over the next 3 to 6 months. Skellington saying carbon fiber body kit. Yeah, the only problem with carbon fiber body kit, number one, is the cost of it. Number two, I don't really feel like it's all that beneficial. You got to remember that I've been doing some preliminary data collecting with my car. And one of the things I've noticed is so far I've pulled right under 200 pounds out of the car. And if I'm going to ask, or if I'm going to answer the question as to how much of a benefit has that made in performance, not near as much of a difference as density altitude does. And when I compare my car to other similar cars that aren't running a drag pack and don't have a rear seat delete and whatever the case might be, there's not that much separating us. In fact, I don't even compare my car to other Challengers. I'll compare it to other Chargers with similar modifications, or at least full weight Chargers versus my Challenger. And in many cases, there's not a lot separating us in terms of ET. So I would have to see a lot more than just a carbon fiber kit in terms of weight reduction here before, and also in terms of weight savings. We're talking, we need to be replacing heavy parts, not stuff that just weighs, 15 pounds with something that weighs 7. We need to be replacing something that weighs 65 or 70 pounds with something that weighs 35 or 40. That kind of idea. We need to be taking chunks of weight out of this thing, not just nibbling at it. Shawnee is saying, I run a diff brakes because I launched the car kind of hard. I like it. Even though I only have a scat pack, it makes me sleep at night like a baby. Hey, listen, I'll tell you something. There ain't nothing wrong with that. And again, it's peace of mind, if nothing else. I'm still a little bit baffled, if I'm being honest, as to how they have mounted that diff in the car. I get it that it works great in the Mercedes, but the only weird thing about it to me is that you've got this one big freaking bushing, rubber no less, and it's that diff will move around quite a bit in there. Not a huge fan of that. So it'd be great if there was a solution that involved just a more solid bushing in there, as opposed to messing with everything else and loading the tabs on the diff the way that bracing does. I would feel a lot better if it was just a stiffer bushing in there. I know some guys have gone in and they've filled them with silicone and have done some other things, and I don't know if that's really helped too much. I can't imagine that it would hurt anything. It's just an old trick with these, the bushings that have the gaps in them. You just fill the gaps, but I don't know. I don't really recommend that. You end up tearing up the bushing doing that, especially if you've got different densities of different material in there. Those things start rubbing around on each other, and you can actually tear up the rubber. But to be honest with you, I mean, all in all, it's I don't know. It's just kind of a weird deal. Still trying to wrap my mind around that. Hey, Racer X is in the house. Got the I like it. What's up, my man? Hoping you had a good weekend. DSRT saying, what up, D? Got the arm flex. What up, D? Hollering out at X2. Zephyr R&D saying, what's up, Professor Mason? Got the fist bump. What do you think the wide body would change the feel characteristics of the Scat Packs and Hellcats Challenger beside the obvious? Actually, the wide body is nice to drive, and they feel more planted. I can tell you that. That basically has probably everything to do with the wider wheel and tire setup than anything else. But aside from that, there's really no big difference between the two. There's no braking difference. One thing I will say is the steering, again, is a bit more direct with those cars, but the steering's not bad with the Hellcat either. So there's not a huge difference. There is a little bit of a difference if you drive them A to B, but if you just drive them individually and you're somewhat removed from one experience or the other, you won't really pick up on the subtle differences between the two cars. Grabbing Gear saying, just wondering if you did the Mopar rear seat delete. Yes, I did, as a matter of fact. Do you have any factory subs in the trunk and air compressor, or did you take them all out? Some weight savings there. My speaker box is back there and my tray is back there, but I don't keep my pump or anything else back there, mainly because of safety. I don't want that stuff flying around. It's not permanently affixed like the speaker box is. So that's the only reason why that pump is out of there. But in terms of weight savings, the pump weighs 7 pounds. The speaker box, the Harman Kardon speaker box, weighs 14 pounds, and the package tray weighs 12 pounds. So there's your generic weight per the things that are in the trunk. As far as, is there any difference getting down the drag strip with those items in the trunk or not? None whatsoever. I have gone back to back to the drag strip with the stuff in the trunk and the stuff out of the trunk. Typically the stuff was out of the trunk because I was carrying a bunch of crap to the drag strip. Just wanted the extra space. To be honest with you, there was no difference. We're only talking about, what, 30 pounds realistically worth of stuff that you're going to be talking about back there, and that 30 pounds on its own doesn't really make that big of a difference. Kind of like the rear seat delete. There was no difference in the rear seat delete. In fact, I'll take that one step farther, comparing it to my SRT. I have time slips on my SRT from a year ago and then the year prior to that, where it was when the car was basically stock with a tune and a tire and a cat delete, and then the rear seat delete and everything out of the trunk. And the car ran nearly identical ET in mile an hour year over year. And oddly enough, density altitudes were just about even. So, you know, you really start splitting hairs when you get into that. And so it didn't make that big of a difference on the SRT. It also did not make that big of a difference on this car. On Friday, had the speaker box and the tray was in there, and the car was running 70s all night in high DA. Well, high for here anyway, you know, 12 to 1400 to 1600 feet as the night progressed and the DA dropped a little bit. So, you know, if I would have taken those items out of the back of the car, it would have still been in the 70s. There wouldn't have been a markable difference one to the next. And I was rocking out heading to the track. So I'd rather have my tunes than, you know, try to chase after a half a tenth in a density altitude that I'm not going to be setting any records in anyway. So hopefully that answers the question though. Eric saying, thank you, sir. Thank you. Dr. Diff saying, Eric, you can get with Dr. Differential for one of those manifolds as well. Hit me up on Monday. Talk to Jesse. Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. You got the guy working for you now. Yeah, hit him up. He can get you taken care of on that. Show me Mopar saying at Sean E. Kind of what I'm thinking on the diff brakes. Absolutely. Eric saying thank you, Dr. Differential. Highly recommended, by the way. Racer X saying, I think the 309 works okay for me. Yeah, it does. But yeah, that predictive shift thing will get you. Hey, I'll tell you what, I'm running into the predictive shift issue and I've got a stock gear in my car. The reason for that, guys, is when you're running a 17-inch wheel and tire combination and you're running in low density altitudes on a very well prepared track. Again, these are all stars that have to align. That is when you start running into that problem where the predictive shift thinks you're going to run into a rev limiter, and so it initiates the shift either early in some cases, but normally it'll just chop throttle and then feed throttle back in. It'll initiate the shift early if you're under wheel spin conditions. But if you dead hook, it will chop throttle because, again, it thinks you're going to hit a rev limiter before it will have time to complete the shift. Well, on a couple of occasions in very good DA on very well prepped tracks, I have yipped on the 1-2 shift, and I knew I was off to the races because every one of those yipped 1-2 shift passes have been very good passes. So it would have actually been a little bit quicker had it not done that. However, it's just something that you can't get around and you can't get away from when you're dealing with these cars. And again, my car is stock so much so that it doesn't even have a 180 thermostat. It still has the factory stock thermostat in it, locked ECU, the whole bit. I mean, when I say it's stock, it is stock in terms of that stuff anyway. And yep, still yipping on that 1-2 shift. Let's see, Michael John saying brace or opinion snubber, old term is a good idea. The only thing about these on a pinion snubber is this diff will actually rock not only up and down, but because it doesn't have a true. Anyway, long story short, it actually also twists a little bit. But yeah, anything to keep the thing in place, and really anything that can pull some type of a load off of that thing in, as it's moving around, to where you're not binding anything, especially with the CV joints. That's one thing I wouldn't mind doing, is putting a set of better CV joints in this car, by the way. It's coming. Just takes time and that money. So, oh, hang on a second. Hang on just a minute. Show me Mopar. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Saying, seriously, can't thank you enough. Car is sorted, man. Makes me smile every time I walk in the garage. Man, I am so stoked about that. Thanks for hanging out with us, man. I appreciate that. And keep rocking with that success, man. I love hearing about it. But thank you very much. I truly appreciate that. Happy to hear about your successes too, guys. I love hearing about that. Let's see. Oh, getting back to it here. Dr. Diff is saying, love his Stankeys. They work great. Yeah, so the Stanky tie bars and collars, you guys may have heard me talk about those before, and I really haven't explained what that does. So first and foremost, the tie bars, basically you have shaft-mounted rockers in your Hemi. The tie bar goes from basically shaft to shaft, and it keeps those from walking around a little bit. Basically just ties everything together. It's not a fluke that you see those on old school Hemis from back in the day, and in fact, the drag pack cars with the Hemi all have Mopar tie bars. Now, they don't have collars. What the collar does is you take the collar and you mount it basically right next, like if this is the rocker, the collar is mounted right next to it. And what it does is you give it 5 thousandths worth of clearance. And it basically, if that rocker moves at all, it's just going to come up against that collar, and the collar is just going to limit its movement. It's not going to put any wear and tear on anything. You've got an oil film in there that's going to handle that. And plus, they're not moving around that much, but they do move around a little at higher RPM and at higher cylinder pressures, oddly enough. And the only reason why I say that is because when I tested them on my 392, I actually picked up a little bit of torque. No reason in the world why it should have picked up torque, but it did. So, again, just a good piece if you're looking for a durability mod, certainly something worth considering. However, I will say this, once you put them on, they're pretty much on forever. So, yeah, just something to consider. Sam saying, man, I want a 70 or 80s Mopar wagon, but hot damn, they are not easy to find. I came across more. Well, okay, so here's the thing. He's saying he came across more trucks. The old wagons are real hard to find. Actually, Houston Craigslist has got two, what are they, Belvedere wagons. It's like a buy one, get one free deal. Buy one car, get a parts car along for the ride. Actually 69 is the year. And I would love to get my hands on one, but, there's only so much room in a 2-car garage. But, yeah, they're tough to find. All these cars are getting tough to find, guys, and that's really more, I think, the point. And I'll tell you something else. Not only are they getting really hard to find, but decent examples, ones that you would normally pick up for not that much money, are starting to be a little bit too pricey. And it's weird to me because there is going to be so much work and time and effort and investment that's going to need to go into some of these cars, really, to get them to any serviceable condition, much less presentable, depending on what you're going for in terms of presentation. But man, I got to tell you, some of the cars that I've been able to find have been awesome. I found some really good deals on a few cars that if they would have been available, I probably would have bought them. About 6 months ago. Freaking, what was it, 67 Satellite that I found is sick to death, 4-speed car. But anyway, there's a lot of really cool stuff that's out there that you can find. There's some of the tribute cars are really cool, but the cars that nobody does any tribute work with, they're real hard to find. Nobody really loves old trucks or wagons or anything like that. Back then, they were just, the family truckster, and literally the family truck or a farm implement or a work vehicle or something like that. So yeah, the whole truck thing is, although not a recent thing, it's a lot more recent than what some of those old D100s would have been used for. Dr. Div saying they bring valve train noise down as well. Yes, they do, as a matter of fact. Vlad's got the thumbs up. I like it. Oh, Show Me Mopar is saying, by the way, we were talking about the 1320 a minute ago. He's saying, by the way, I agree. Cool logo, but with the B Mason recipe on my 16 Scat Challenger and no tune, car runs mid to high 11s all day long and twice on Sunday in crap VA2. I keep telling you guys, man, you get the right car, get the right driver with the right experience, somebody that enjoys it, is motivated, is taking the thing to the drag strip, playing with it a little bit on the street, learning the platform to the best of their abilities. You got the recipe with what you've already got in the showrooms to really be able to put a hurting on a quarter mile. So again, you know, the 1320, to me, it's a missed opportunity. And that's a real shame. And another thing that I feel like is a real missed opportunity is the fact that all of these Mopars are being marketed to us with all the pomp and circumstance of a 3-ring circus. You got all the loud noises, the tire smoke. Everybody's inked up, everybody's partying, everybody's having a good time. I'm with it, man. I'm part of that crowd. But the reality is that when you take something that you're marketing to us as, you know, as your buying public and as people that are into these things and are car enthusiasts, but you still don't back them up with solid support from the aftermarket, that's a bit of a bummer. And I'll use that opportunity to segue into the Elephant has just become released, I guess, as a part number that you can order and buy. Well, here we go again. Yeah, I think the engine itself with the controller and I don't know, whatever other doodads they're going to throw in for good measure is checking in right around 28 large. And although on some hands you can look at it and go, well, man, that doesn't really seem like it's too bad. You get an aluminum block, it's a 426, it's got the upgraded supercharger, you know, it's making 1,000 horsepower, presumably on pump gasoline. What could be possibly wrong with that? Well, what can be wrong with that is the fact that if you take a Hellcat, the one that's sitting behind me, lower pulley, upper pulley, injectors, pumps, E85, abracadabra, it's 1,000 horsepower for a hell of a lot less than $28,000. Now, you might be looking at it as a repower option, but shit, for that amount of money, you can build. Well, I'm not a big fan of 426s for these things, but you can still build a 426. I put a larger or a different supercharger on it. You would have to deal with all the headaches of tuning at that point, but hell, if nothing else, just buy another engine, build it, put the thing together, or better yet, take your car to somebody who knows how to tune it and doesn't blow the damn thing up in the first place. It's a novel approach. Anyway, long story short, I'm sure that that engine is going to have an audience, and no doubt that you're going to start seeing onesie twosies of those things showing up in, you know, somebody's Hellcat Charger or Challenger. It'll be the next best thing, whatever. To me, you know, there's a slight weight savings to the assembly. You're looking at about 100 pounds less than a normal Scat Pack setup. Scat Pack, the Hellcat setup. My thing is, I'm not really so sure that it's worth the extra money. And speaking of extra money, where the hell is the all aluminum NA 426 for guys that want to build an NA platform? You know how much fun it would be to have an all aluminum 426 with an intake manifold that would actually work for larger displacement and high RPM use. Mopar, please take a page out of what Chevy is doing, or at least the aftermarket is doing. And what would be better than that? I mean, that to me would mean more to me than the supercharged version of a Hellcat engine that the Hellcat engine's already pretty much getting it done on its own. You got guys like Racer X. Racer X in solid DA is a mid 9-second car. I'm gonna let that sink in for a minute. A car that he can drive from Dallas to Maine, go from Maine to I don't know, Seattle down to a whale's vagina, and then run that thing back over to Dallas. And as long as he's got E85 on tap, he's in good shape. So that doesn't get any more durable than that. And I'm curious as to what issues they may or may not have with that hell of an engine. I'm sure there won't be too many. But it's the idea that you got to spend that kind of money to get the performance out of, well, out of anything, basically, when you compare it to a stock Hellcat platform. It's just that good already. Or a stock Demon or Red Eye platform, for that matter. Again, makes it a little bit different, difficult to I don't know, digest. Sam's hollering out at Racer X. Canada guy is saying, how's it going, brother? How's it going, Canada? Question for you. What first mods would you recommend for my 6.1 manual? 6.1 manual, what mods would I recommend? You know, I'm not sure if that thing has got the clutch restrictor in it, but if it does, ditch that, because that sucks. Aside from that, the cool thing about 6.1s is that that's the closest thing you're going to get to an LS, if you want to think of it that way, for the Mopars. You know, obviously a tune will help you out quite a bit. Just in terms of making the car a little bit more lively. I would say aside from that, Hellcat airbox, Hellcat intake, or Hellcat filter rather, would be on the short list of things that I would do. And then from there, it just depends on what your budget will allow. I got to tell you, the car is fairly well sorted from the factory the way that it sits, but they do love themselves a camshaft. And the intake manifold, God, man, if it were mine, I would just bite the bullet and have that thing extrude hone. Porting it, you're just not going to get there porting that intake manifold. It is a prime candidate for extrude honing. I would do that. Maybe a ported throttle, a true through body ported throttle body, and cam and headers would really liven that car up a bit. The cool thing about the 6.1, this is going to sound kind of weird, I know, but the cool thing about the 6.1 is that you're not dealing with a set of cylinder heads that limits your camshaft too much. You can actually put a little bit of a rowdy camshaft in a 6.1, and because of the head flow and because of the intake manifold, you're not going to lose as much down low, or at least you won't perceivably lose as much down low as you will with a 6.4. Which is kind of the way it works with those cars. But they are a lot of fun with a mild cam for sure. But that's kind of the direction I would go. It's a manual car, so obviously you don't have to worry about trans tuning, anything else like that. And, you know, as far as getting the thing down the drag strip, it just, you know, really wheel and tire setup would be any generic drag pack would do just fine. Racer X hollering out at Sam. Jazz Hellcat saying, thumbs up, y'all. Yeah, thumbs up for me. See how many thumbs ups we can get on here. Symphonic saying, possible for an A10 18 GT with just the 85 Lund tune to be at a full bolt-on C7 and a 40 to 140 roll. Seen one YouTube guy claim this. I didn't buy it though. I think he's lying about his mods. Oh man, I hate to tell you this, but the Mustangs, they run really well with that setup. I don't know that it's entirely possible to beat a C7, a full bolt-on C7. I will say that maybe a C7 with exhaust only, yeah, I can see that, because Shalandra would run door handle to door handle with a C7, and it wasn't a problem on the free. In controlled environments. But yeah, if it's just got an exhaust maybe, but a full bolt-on C7, you're in its wheelhouse if you're doing roll racing with that car. Full bolt-on, if it's done the right way, will not be phased, I don't think, by that Mustang. Not too much anyway. Now, again, full bolt-ons, I'm also assuming it's going to have a tune involved, and it's going to depend on who did the tuning. I wouldn't say that full bolt-on C7, if it did lose, is really a representation of what a true, properly sorted FBO C7 would deliver in that type of a situation. Let's see. Speed Freak saying, hey, Brian, have a drag racing question. Hey, that's right up my alley. Saying, seen a few cars bracket racing with deep on the windows. What's the benefit of deep staging? The benefit of deep staging, what you're talking about in bracket racing is the idea with bracket racing is to get from point A to point B before the other guy. It's not to get from point A to point B with a quicker ET. It's a different type of racing. In that type of bracket racing, what he's going to do is he is going to forego his buffer, and he's going to trip the top light. He's going to trip the second light, and then he's going to roll into the beam and trip that top light. It's basically going to be deep staged. And what that does is it gives you about close to 18 inches worth of less worth of distance that you're going to have to go. It also helps you on the tree. It helps you in timing on the tree because you have a specific time on that tree that you're going to want to leave. And so if I'm bracket racing and I'm in that situation, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to eliminate the load up time on the car, because just because you have a certain reaction time, let's say you're sitting there, got your foot on the throttle, got the clutch depressed, and you go to launch that car. Just because you are engaging that clutch and you're into the throttle, it doesn't mean that the clutch is fully engaged. It doesn't mean that the power has had a chance to travel through the drive shaft into the rear end and then be deflected somewhat by the suspension as the power is being put to the ground. And then from there, the vehicle is reacting. You've got some deflection in the tire. All of that takes time. In some cars, it takes a lot of time. It may happen in what seems like a blink of an eye, but if you slow it down in bullet time, so to speak, you'll see all of these things coming together, and it's like, damn, is this thing ever going to start getting moving? That's the reason why you do that. You're taking that element somewhat out of the equation, and you're just putting the car a little bit ahead of the other guy. Some guys will shallow, some guys will deep, and shallow is just meaning you barely trip that bottom bowl. If you're very confident with how that tree is going to come down, you might be able to get away with that. But the problem with that is that if you're running on a and that only works if the tree is automatic and it's random, or it's not random. You get both lights, you get both bulbs going, and then launch when the thing starts to drop. Again, if it's automatic, and in other words, when the software sees that both bulbs are tripped, you're going to launch. You can time it, and you can shallow stage and get a run up of 18 inches onto that beam. If it's not, what you want to do is rely on reaction time. And when you see the tree trip, launch that thing, especially if you're on a two-step. That's really when it's the most important, is to launch on a two-step. I hope I didn't wear that topic out too much. Hey, Mark's in the house saying, hey, Brian, can't stay doing double shift at work, hashtag overtime. No kidding, right? Have a great night, brother. Hope all's well with you. It is. Hope all's well with you too, my friend. Michael Johnson saying, my understanding of weight is the best thing to try to lower our rotational things. Rotating weight has some sort of multiplication effect. Drive shaft, wheels, etc. What are your thoughts on that? Man, I gotta tell you, it's true. It is true. I wouldn't try to read too much into it. So to give you guys an idea, the drag pack versus my street setup. First of all, we have to agree that there's about an 80-pound difference between my drag pack and the street setup that I've got here, which are 10.5s over here, stock 9.5s back there, 305 35 20s, and 275 45 40. God, for some reason it slipped my mind. 275 40s up front. Clearly a heavy wheel and tire setup. And again, there's about an 80-odd pound difference between the two. The difference in ET is about 1.5 to, if you're being super generous, 2/10 from running a true full drag pack setup to my street tire setup over here. But the big difference is in the 60 foot. So, and the tire compound is what gets you the 60 foot more than anything else. So, oh, and the slight reduction in gearing with that 17-inch wheel and tire combination. So if you're looking at it from that point of view, if all things are equal, let's say you get a tenth and a half, and again, we're being generous here. That's on these cars, and so is that enough of a difference to warrant the expense? Well, for me it is, because, well, drag pack wheel and tire setups are really a lot easier to launch, and to me they seem to be a lot safer. That mainly because I'm not worried about, a 1-2 shift issue. Not to mention, I'm not tearing up the drag strip every time I go down the track. So, not that you're going to do that if you're running a set of ET Street SSs or Tri 5Rs for that matter. But it's just the idea that, to me, it's just easier on those tires. Plus, they don't make as big of a mess when you do burnouts. But as far as how much of a difference, not a whole lot. Not enough in the real world for it to really make that much of a difference. But if you're going for a number, you need every single advantage that you can get. And because of that, that's why I run drag pack when I take it to the drag strip. Hey, quick breaks in. Thank you very much. Sweet, I like it. Got the $2 contribution. I love it. Keeps me in Diet Cokes. Thank you, sir. Saying, buddy, a little something for the channel. Thank you so very much, my friend. Always good to hear from you. We'll be giving you a shout mañana. But thank you very much, buddy. I appreciate that. Dr. Diff is saying, he's saying smack the limiter on the 1-2 shift for both of the fastest times. Took us a bit to get everything right, but the last 2 passes, it was on kill and it hit that limiter. Any advice? Man, we're going to have to take a look at that, because there could be a combination of things going on. Again, with the 410 gears, you may need to drop that 1-2 significantly. In fact, I would start by doing that. Do something kind of silly with the tune, but again, we're going to have to have it on a track where it's very sticky. This kind of stuff doesn't work well when the truck lights the tires up, but have it command a shift at somewhere around 4,600 RPM, 4,300 RPM at wide open throttle on the 1-2, and then leave that limiter nice and high. If it still hits the limiter, it might be slipping the clutches, so just something to consider on that. It's something that I have done just in playing around with transmission tunes to see how early I can force one to shift. And, in some cases, especially yours where you're making a lot more power than that thing was ever intended to make, might be a good idea to take a look at doing that with the truck. But again, it takes time, and you've got to have a very well prepped track. Luckily, I think you're making plenty of power, more than enough, to where you won't have to rely on a low DA to get you the data that you need. B5 saying, what up, B-Mace? What up, B5? Scat 426 in the house saying, what up, B? What up, Scat? Let's see. Jason saying, you need to try the new performance development, the big diff brace. We love ours, night and day difference from the old. I'll tell you what, I might not be that far away from giving that a shot. There's a few things that I need to get for the car first. And because I'm still running a 262 rear gear, I'm not really sure if I need to go that extra route. If nothing else, I would like to get that diff brace on the car, because it does have a secondary bushing back there, as opposed to just, locking the diff in place a little bit. I'm not sure that it's hurting anything to have that performance brace back there, but I like the way that I like the direction that they went with the new brace. I just don't, again, understand what is the fear factor if you're going to put a solid brace back there, like all of their braces have been leading up to this. If you're going to put a solid brace back there, then why not go with and you're going to develop something that's got a bushing, why not go with a bushing that's a little bit stiffer? That's the only question that I have. Give it some deflection, but I don't know. Another rubber bushing is just, I don't know. There's a reason for it, I'm sure, but I'm failing to understand it. Somebody's going to have to explain that to me. Racer X saying, quick break in the house. Hell yeah. Luke is saying it's his birthday. Well, happy birthday to you. Quick break saying, well, crap, trying to send you $30, but super chat acting stupid for some reason. Check your PayPal. Brother, you don't have to do that, man. I truly appreciate that. Thank you very much. Man, I really do appreciate that, brother. Thank you so much. I'll be giving you a shout, mañana, by the way, but thank you so much for that, buddy. Let's see. Scout 426. By the way, hey, Rob, I've had that problem before with the super chat as well. I did on one night, it wouldn't even let me send money. I was going, what happened? And then I had to basically turn my phone off, turn it back on, and then sign back in. And then after that, it worked. But that was a lot of work, and that was kind of weird. But anyway, yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. Scott's saying, someone asked if pulling the fuse on a Challenger SXT PCM to reset the adapters will work like the 392. I didn't know what to tell him. Yeah, it does. Disconnecting the battery does the same thing. Again, it's always going to relearn basically how you're driving the vehicle. So they're always going to be a little bit aggressive, and then they'll numb up somewhat once the computer relearns how you're driving the car. But yeah, no, it works on anything with an automatic transmission that's computer controlled that is using a predictive shift strategy. It absolutely will work. Let's see. Marcel's saying, Lucas, his was yesterday. Well, happy birthday to everybody. If it's your birthday, happy birthday. Scout 426 with all the thumbs up. Woo, I love it. Running Circle Productions is saying hi. Well, hello, Running Circle. Sophonics, heard Johnny Lieberman call the LT5 the end of the road for GM's cam and block, small block. You buying this? I'll tell you something. I'm not so sure that it's the end of the line for a cam and block in general for GM, but as a performance platform, it might be the beginning of the end. I know that the Corvette, the C8, is actually you're looking to have an overhead cam option, a V8 option for that car. I don't know what other platforms that's going to migrate into. You got to remember that with Chevrolet, you got to think like Chevrolet to understand the Chevrolet. Hang on just a second. Turn this freaking thing down here. But to understand where Chevrolet is going or coming from, all of those engines that they're running are basically just corporate V8s. And so if they can incorporate a dual overhead cam, say, into their trucks, if they can make it a financially viable platform moving forward, then that might be a good idea. And there's other manufacturers that have done that, namely Ford and Toyota with their V8s. I mean, their V8s are all dual overhead cam, and they're fantastic engines to say the least. So, if Chevrolet is going to join that club, then this would be the direction they would go, and a good way to vet that engine, so to speak, pardon the pun, but very well placed, if I don't mind me saying. But they need to run it in the Corvette. They need to put it in a situation where they, in a platform that is going to be very well tested and highly durability tested in the real world. I would think of it as beta testing, but it's kind of close to that. Again, I would agree with the statement somewhat, but not in full. Let's see. Running Circle Production is asking, do I, and of course it would be the we in this, know the Muffin Man? Actually, I do know a guy that makes muffins. It is a man that makes the muffins, and he makes some damn good muffins too. Bakery right down the street. So indeed, I do know the Muffin Man. Tony, hey, what's up, man? Saying what's up. B, hope all is well. All is well. Busy, but well indeed. So Getting back to the Hellcat though, obviously the next video that I'll be putting together is, the my thoughts, things I like, things I dislike about it. But the dislike part of it's going to be real short because there's nothing that I dislike per se about the car. It does everything very well, at least in the way that the vehicle was engineered. In fact, it overperforms in a couple of different areas. And one of those areas is just the overall feel of driving the car. If you've never driven a Hellcat, or if you're used to driving a 392 car with the electric power steering and then you drive a Hellcat, the Hellcat still uses old school hydraulic power steering. It feels a lot different than driving let me rephrase that. It is noticeably different than driving one of the electric power steering cars in that it has a more direct, connected feel to the road than the electric power steering cars. It's not that the electric power steering cars don't feel connected. It's just that the old school hydraulic units just have a more familiar feel to them than anything else. That to me, well, that's kind of nice, and I like that. The second thing is just in terms of overall performance. The funny thing is that my wife and I, we took the car out, what was it, yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. And basically we're just she was my co-pilot and, collecting data on the car. So wide open throttle, the boost gauge will show 10 pounds of boost. Some will show 11, some show 12. It doesn't matter. By the way, the DA was about 1,200, 1,300. It was 74 degrees, fairly high humidity. But I wanted to see how much boost the gauge was going to show, and it was showing 10 pounds of boost. Well, the funny thing is that it'll show 10 pounds of boost just at partial throttle. So I guess the point that I'm making here is that the car is really fun to drive. I mean, it'll still make peak boost at partial throttle, and it acts like it just wants to take off. And I love that about this car. It was the partial throttle performance of the car that has always endeared me more to the Hellcat than the wide open throttle performance. And again, as weird as that might say or seem, it really does, it needs to be said, because for something this heavy to be that spirited and that lively with, just a partial throttle run, I don't know. To me, that means a little bit more. The one weird thing about the Hellcat, though, is that it doesn't feel as sharp as the 392. For you guys that have got a well-sorted 392, you'll know what this means. 392s have got real crisp throttle response. Tip-in is very aggressive, and they feel just a little bit more eager. Well, you lose that when you get a Hellcat. Now I know what you're going to say. Well, you just give it a little bit more throttle. Well, yeah, you give it a little bit more throttle, you get the thing into a little bit more boost, and it surges forward. But the difference is that you don't have the gearing that you have with the 392 cars, and you don't have the compression ratio that you have with the 392 cars either. So you've got a less lively engine unless you're deep into it under boost. You've got a slightly heavier car because you got all that supercharger to play with. That is weight. But you've also just got, the gearing that's not as aggressive. You add all of that up, the 392 actually feels a little bit punchier under certain circumstances. So again, it's just one of the other observations that I've found with this car is, you get to playing with it and you start to notice the differences a little bit more. And, which one do I like better? To be honest with you, it depends on what I'm doing with the car. If I'm just out tooling around, I really miss the 392 because that thing was a riot. And, tipping into the throttle, half throttle, that thing would just start lighting the tires up. This car will do that too, but it just seems to be a bit more labored until you really get the thing into boost, which just translates into moving your foot about half an inch more on the throttle. That's when everything changes. And when the Hellcat, well, that's when you know where you spent your money, is in that half inch. Let's see. Oh, White Knuckles checking in saying, what up, B? Do you think running a Kohler T-Stat helps? Let's see. He's also saying, I didn't see much difference from the 180 to the 160. Not really. From 180 to 160, you won't notice too much. From the 200 degree thermostat down to 180, though, you might notice a little bit of a difference. I am still running the stock thermostat with this car, although I was running a 180 in my 392. And I liked it. You know, the oil temp stayed a little bit lower as well, because the oil coolers in these cars are using the cooling system to cool the oil down. So, you know, there was that to consider. But really, yeah, it helps. It absolutely does help. But I just haven't gotten around to it yet. And I guess that pause was there just to for me to think of, why haven't I done that to my car yet? To be honest with you, it just keeps slipping my mind. The thing's running great at the drag strip the way that it sits now. And look, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this is one of those situations where I don't even have to get my hands dirty. All I got to do is keep the oil changed, and that's it. Hey, that's pretty fun. And I get a 10-second car that just keeps running 10s. Honestly, no matter what the temperature is. Oh, by the way, it'll give me a good opportunity to give you this data, guys. So last night, the first pass that I made was in obnoxious DA. And like I say, it was 1700, 84 degrees. And in fact, I did a real quick live show saying, happy Hemi Day. I'm at the drag strip having some fun. So that pass that I made, I was the second pair of cars to go down the track. Again, DA was high, and the car went a 1081 at 126, 127, something like that. And throughout the course of the day, and the temperature on that pass was like 172 or 186, something like that, the water temperature. Throughout the rest of the night, you know, I would make passes, and I honestly, guys, I'm not really paying that close of attention to what the water temps are. I'll look at them from a point of curiosity, but when I made my very last pass, the quickest pass of the night, and admittedly the DA was about 300 feet lower, so not a whole lot different, but still different enough to where it warrants mentioning. The water temperature was 205 when I made that pass. So go figure. And it went in 81 early in the night, and on the 205 pass, or the 205 degree pass, it went 1075, like 128. 127. Anyway, somewhere around in there, but yeah, it was a 1075 at 100 and almost mid 120s, mid to high 120s. So that'll give you an idea in terms of the difference, at least on this car, on a stock car, between one and the next. It doesn't really translate that much into getting the thing down the drag strip. At least not not on Friday. Let's see. Oh yeah, Robbie. Damn mosquitoes. You know, I wonder if you sprayed one with off, if it wouldn't be able to stand being around itself, if it would just make it real depressed. Anyway, Robbie's asking, what up, B? Saying, missed you at quick 30, man. If I'd have been there, I would have been there with bells on, but I just could not be there. But I saw one of the videos of Brian running a 40. But that's awesome that he ran a 30. That is hauling the mail at 147 miles an hour. Absolutely. By the way, Brian was on TV. I was watching some of the Pro Mod boat races on Nav TV. And anyway, it was just kind of funny. So I didn't catch him at the drag strip, but I was clicking through a couple of things today, and I was going, oh yeah, there's one of the old boat races. And sure enough, he was on there racing. So, but no, that car is a monster, by the way. No doubt about it. Car's got more in it too. Believe me when I tell you. Let's see. Jose is asking, hey B, should I focus on weight reduction or horsepower on your Challenger? It says on stock red eye tires, what PSI should I run at the drag strip? So we got two questions back to back. First thing I would say is focus on weight reduction. Unless you're talking about wheels and tires, weight reduction really doesn't cost you anything, and it's actually a little bit easier on parts. So I would say go that route first if you're taking the car to the drag strip often. If you're taking the car to the drag strip often. Got that one. If you are, let's see, if you're talking about wheels and tires, stuff like that, I would still suggest going that route. Mainly, again, because it makes your trip at, or your time at the drag strip that much more productive, if for no other reason. Let's see, and then he says, or he asks, on stock red-eye tires, what PSI should I run at the drag strip? I would say, if you're running the all seasons, bring them down to about 20, try 23 and see how that works. If you're running the summer tires, you might be able to get away with 23, 24, but that's where I would start with those tires and see what it is going to act like at those pressures. It's going to be tough on stock tires no matter what, but I think that'll be a good starting point for you. That's where I would start anyway. White Knuckle saying, up here on the west coast of Canada, RDA has been sitting around 700 for the last 2 weeks, and the car has been loving it. I bet it has been loving it. I'd be loving that too. Hey, Dr. Dips back in saying, oh, his dad ran his car too. It was the first time he's ever been down the drag strip. He has got a lot to learn, but did a good job. He got better throughout the night, but never could figure out how to get traction. Yeah, sometimes that's a fun thing. I'll tell you what, I've had, interestingly enough, quite a few guys at the drag strips that I've been trying to help out that are new to drag racing, although not new to driving in general. And it's funny, how simple you think that it is. You're just going straight. You get in the car, go straight all the time. Nothing to it, right? Well, the reality is there's a lot to drag racing, a lot of subtleties, and that's the thing. And the devil's in the details. There's a lot of details, so you got a lot of devil to deal with. But yeah, it's funny. A couple of guys that I was helping out, trying to give them some advice on how to launch manual transmission cars. One guy in particular, and had a pretty decent TA, pretty decent looking TA, as a matter of fact. And God, it was just one of those things where you almost forget, if you've been doing this for a long time, but explaining how to launch, especially a manual transmission on a drag strip, is weird, because you're trying to explain this block of knowledge that literally you're doing everything at once, and while you're doing this, you need to be doing that. That kind of cadence makes that first thing sound more important than the second thing. And anyway, but I get it for sure. Let's see. Hang on. Oh, Doc Diff is saying Rams going on the dyno May 21st. Any guesses? Saying he's trying to talk Pops into getting his also. I don't know. It's going to be in the sixes for sure. Maybe even high sixes. Got a lot of power going through that car, man. And, well, it depends on what boost you're going to run it at. But I would say with that setup, yeah, you're going to be making some power with that thing for sure. So, I don't know, 672 will be my guess. I don't know. It's hard to say. Wait, you're on 85? We need to turn the turbo up a little bit. I wonder if you can get 7 out of it. Michael Johnson, is the reason that going with 17-inch wheels versus stock size for launching a car because of the sidewall of the tire's capability to flex? A little bit. It has a lot more to do with the actual compound of the tire and the size of the tire, really more than anything. But the compound is really something that is what's helping you get out of the hole. But really, if we're talking about 17s, you're talking about an inch shorter in total diameter. So you do get some gearing benefit from that. But The reality is that it's got a lot more to do with the actual compound than anything else. And again, you got to look at it from this point of view. The guys that run the Bravados with the 18-inch 305 wheel and tire setup, those are all basically stock height rear tire setups, and they do equally as well. So, again, if there's going to be a benefit, it's just going to be from that slight gearing advantage that the 17s will give you. Dr. Div saying got 7 pounds to 12 pounds slowly and dialing it in. White Knuckle saying that's negative 700. Oh, shit. Yeah, negative 700. I'll bet it does. Man, we need a trailer in my car up there, man. Go hang out with you guys. Dr. Div saying 7 to 12 slowly and dialing it in. Yeah, it's going to get up there pretty quick. I mean, it's going to start giving you some numbers that are going to start looking pretty scary here pretty soon. 556 is checking in. Powered by SRT saying, hey to all the fellow Moparians in chat. You all are awesome. Love it. Got the thumbs up saying B Mason is all right too. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. But no, Dr. Diff, that truck is going to be nasty. And again, you're just going to be limited by what you can get away with that transmission. And you're not too far away from needing to send that thing a little bit further east and get that thing built, because you're going to need it, brother. Again, getting back into, what we were talking about with the Hellcat, it's some of the weird, subtle nuances between this car and the 392 that you just, it's kind of hard to put into words. But when I'm talking about the car feeling soft compared to a 392, I'm not saying that it doesn't run good, or that it's slow, or that it feels sluggish, or that it's lazy. Yet far from it. It's just that you never really get that lively feel with the Hellcat that you do with a 392 car, especially a very well sorted 392. And here's something else too. Because of the way that the car is geared, if you're used to driving a 392 car, it's extremely easy with a Hellcat. If you're doing everything just based on feel, not looking at a speedometer, and you're just you're basing your acceleration rate off of what the engine sounds like and the amount of thrust that you're getting. It is overwhelmingly easy to look down at the speedometer and be going 20 to 25 miles an hour faster than you thought you were going. Especially if you're just kind of buzzing around on the freeway. I have found myself tipping into the throttle and, not really thinking about it, just driving around, playing with the radio, doing whatever. And I've noticed myself going, if I'm just accelerating to get around somebody and then move back into my lane again, just that type of acceleration rate with this car is fairly significant, especially if you're playing around with on-ramps where you're just letting the car go through the gears. And that's really where I was going with that. Just let the car go through the gears. You're just kind of letting it do its thing. That's really where the difference comes into play, is that you don't feel the difference in terms of acceleration because the gearing is numbed. But yeah, you've got more torque, so that the actual G load that you're feeling is basically the same. It's just that you're moving and accelerating at a faster rate. Hopefully that makes sense. You're just experiencing the same amount of thrust for longer, and it does it more effortlessly. White Knuckle is asking, I have a buddy over and he wants your opinion on putting a set of long tubes on a stock 5.7. Worth it or not really? Well, the 5.7 is a little bit interesting because the stock manifolds on a 5.7 are junk, and realistically, so is the rest of the exhaust system on that car. What I would suggest doing would be, yes, put a set of long tubes on the car and then put a cat back on it as well. If you really want to uncork that engine, you'd be surprised. Getting rid of that freaking suitcase muffler that they put on those things can certainly help. But put a set of long tubes on it, or a set of 6.4 or Hellcat manifolds with a 6.4 exhaust on it. It'll actually open that car up quite a bit. And it's funny too, because the 5.7 is so restricted. When you do upgrades like exhaust, headers, what have you, they respond better to them. The other thing is that the intake manifold is more properly set up and sized for those engines. So you can get a little bit more RPM out of them. Camshafts tend to make a larger percentage gain on those vehicles. Obviously, the exhaust comes into play too. And it's one of those situations where the benefit to a 5.7 is that if you have one and you start tinkering with it, you'll start to see some results fairly quickly, or at least you'll see some gains performance-wise, percentage-wise, that you just won't see with the 6.4. The 6.4 is already really well sorted out. But that's not to say that the 5.7 can't be worked on. And again, you do get more of an increase with the 5.7. Now, if the goal is to try to get it to 6.4 numbers, you're going to have a real hard time doing that. I mean, again, it's tough to beat the 6.4 in terms of just being a raw, nasty, naturally aspirated big engine. The 5.7, though, can get reasonably close and give you 90% of the performance for about, well, you're still going to be paying the Mopar tax, but at least you'll be able to have some fun and have something that you've been able to see some type of a gain along the way. Real 5-0 saying, we still going? Sure. Bumford saying, what's up, Mason? What's up, Bumford? SRT Crazy saying, there's the Mopar Master. How you doing, man? Doing well. Hope you're doing well, too. Hey, what is your favorite muscle car besides Mopars? Obviously, got the thumbs up, as well as Ford GTs and Stangs. Man, I like the quirky stuff. So the stuff that nobody really paid a lot of attention to. Buick, Grand Sports. Stage 1 Buick is probably one of my favorites. I'm an idiot. Okay, so if you want to call this a muscle car, it's going to be a little bit of a stretch. But the 73 and 74 Super Duty 455 Trans Am is probably number 2 on my list of all-time absolute favorite cars in general. Big fan of the 74. Those two, to me, even though they're low compression, I know all you got to do to bring those up to and then surpassing most of the big blocks from the original 60s era. But those two are probably my favorite. So Buicks and Pontiacs, for sure, will be on the top of the list. And again, man, there's something about the big Buicks with that 455 that I just love. I know that there's not. They too have a ceiling because the Buick 455 is a lightweight engine, but it's lightweight because of thin casting. You can still get plenty of power out of that thing, and realistically, that engine's just there to make torque. Obviously 442 will always be high on the list. W30 with a 4-speed, you kidding me? But man, I don't know. Something about the big GMs I always liked, but Pontiacs and Buicks would be my next love. Love those things. And oddly enough, a lot of times those are not that. I mean, still fairly hard to find, but you don't pay the Mopar tax, and because they're not Chevys, not many people are looking for them. They always go, I want a Chevelle, or I want a GTO or something like that. Well, a lot of times the Buicks get overlooked because people forget about them. That would be a lot of fun, though. I'd love to have a stage 1. King Size saying, what's up, Mason? What's up, King? Let's see. Real 50 saying, hey, bud, what do you think about EcoBoost High Performance Pack? It actually works really well. The funny thing about that setup, though, is that you got to remember that you get a ton of power and then it fades off really early. So they work great. In fact, there's a kind of a handful of the EcoBoost Mustangs down here that are running, they're running low 12s. So I don't know everything that they've got done to them, but you can certainly get some stank out of those things. I would just say, be careful with it, because obviously, it's a smaller engine, you're putting a lot of load on it, but there's still a lot of cars that are running really good down here. And I think that performance setup, the Ford one, oh man, I forget how much power bump it is, but I know it picks up a ton of torque. King Sai saying, how do you like the new 19 Rams? They're growing on me. I'm not totally in love with them just yet, but man, they look pretty good. The interior is really nice though. And if that, let's face it, when you're driving the thing, you're not looking at it from the outside, and realistically you're just it's just windshield time. So but no, I like the interior of them a lot, by the way. Why don't they just offer the 392 and the half ton? It's so dumb. Let's see. 55.6 is asking, is there a noteworthy difference in 91 octane tune versus 93 at the strip for a 392? Not really. Not really. Your target timing is going to still be pretty close on both of those tunes. You might be down about a degree-ish on a 91 octane tune, but on a Hemi that's not as much of a detriment as it would be on a wedge motor, mainly because the Hemis aren't as, well, number one, they don't like a lot of tune in them that is a little bit low on timing, just isn't going to hurt a whole lot. So don't sweat it, don't worry about it. They're both gonna help you. And really, if you've got an automatic car, transmission tuning will do more for getting that vehicle down the drag strip than the engine tune will. Michael Johnson saying the 350 Rocket was a pretty strong engine too. Yes, it was. Dustin Bartosh saying, what up, B? Woo, devil horns, I like it. Saying, hey, planning on camming my 5.7 Challenger. Should I port my stock intake or go with a 392 intake manifold? Well, got a couple of ways you can go with that. If you are going to go through the procedure of putting a window switch on it that opens that manifold up at about 4,900 RPM, then I would say go with the 6.4 manifold. If you are not going to go through with that, then I would say get your 5.7 manifold ported, and you'll get, depending on the condition of your manifold, you'll get quite a bit out of it just by, again, depending on the condition of it, just by relieving some of that, the casting flash, getting that stuff out of that manifold. Between the two, the 6.4 is a superior manifold, though, clearly, because it has the capability of running that short runner valve. So, if it's my car, I would take the extra time on a 6.4, port that manifold, and then get you the window switch to activate the actuator at, it should be on that car, that size runner, that displacement, somewhere around 4,700 is stock. I would say that 5.7 probably about 4,900 if you're going with a cam. And that's typically the breakover point. In fact, you may stretch that out to $5,000 if you've got a cam in the car. Oh yeah, okay, we're good. Dustin, sorry, got thrown off here. Dustin, the 392 and a 1500 from the factory would be badass. Yeah, it would, and it'd be easy as hell to do. So what gives, Mopar? Come on, it can't be that hard. You take the engine and you put it in the truck. It's the same size as the 5.7. You just put a program in it and Ta-da! I just don't get it. You know what? It might have something to do with compression ratio, the weight of the truck, or oh wait, that wouldn't make any sense. You got the Durango and the Jeep. Ha! Yeah, they don't have any excuse as far as I'm concerned. Let's see. Bumper is asking, what do you think about the Pontiac G8 GXP, the LS362? Love the LS3. In fact, the LS3 is arguably one of the best engines to ever be made. I mean, that thing, heads flow like crazy. The aftermarket absolutely loves them. Any intake manifold for any application, whether you're building a tow truck, a boat engine, a drag race car, road race car, blender. They got an intake manifold for that engine to do anything and do it extremely well. So, yeah, they're awesome. It is the new small block 350, and it is in terms of versatility. You can do anything in the world with it, and it will do a fantastic job as long as you have the right parts mix. It'll do a fantastic job. Sherrod is asking, if you forge a 392, would you change the cam for a Hellcat cam? No, I wouldn't. Or stay with a stock cam? No, I wouldn't do that either. The car will have a Magnuson TVS 2300 on 10 to 12 pounds of boost, 10% overdrive. Oh, I didn't get that far before I answered the question. Go with the Hellcat cam. You can, as far as a custom grind cam, you can absolutely make some power. I mean, you're going to want to favor the exhaust side on the cam if you're going to do that, just so that you're evacuating the cylinder as much as possible for the use of pump gas. If you can get your hands on a Hellcat cam, that's fine. A dedicated blower cam will get you a little bit more power, but you're not going to go wrong with a Hellcat cam, obviously. Actually, you know what? Go with the Hellcat cam. That's what I would do if it were mine. Or give Dr. Diff a shout and have him get a hold of one of his cam setups, because they work really well. King's Eye, it would be nice to see a modern CUDA. If you could design one, what engine and other specs would you use? Glad you asked. So for a modern CUDA, it would be an all-aluminum 392. Wouldn't probably go with a 426, mainly because of development costs and everything else that would be involved with it. But we already know that the 392, or at least the aluminum block that the 392 would go into, which would be the Elephant casting, would do just fine. I would then offer an upgrade after about 2 years on the car for the 426. I would run both of them at about 11 to 1 compression, and I would have a revised intake over the current intake manifold. I would offer it with the 8-speed automatic and a 6-speed manual, and I would offer gear ratio options of 262, 309, and 331, depending on what you wanted to do with the car. And what I mean by that is, if you wanted to go higher horsepower, at least let you have the 262. For NA guys, for drag racing, 331. The cam would be a revised version of the current existing 392 cam with a little bit more duration, and I would extend the RPM range to about 66 to 6,800 RPM, and obviously drag a little bit of weight out of it. Let's see, what else would I do? Better bushings all the way around. Might not be an option, but I would at least look into that. And let's see, what else would I do? That'd be a good start. I think that's a good start for us. Mr. 7 is asking 6 for car intake manifold versus 6 for truck intake, same or different in performance? Oh, 6.4, I see it. Sorry, voice to text. I know that I live that all day. So 6.4 car intake manifold versus 6.4 truck intake, same or different in performance? So I think technically the 6.4 truck intake might be a better intake all the way around. But the 6.4 car intake does a great job of putting down a lot of torque down low and then having provisions to carry the power better up on the top end. So if I'm going to go with one for performance, as much as it pains me, I would still go with the car intake. But my understanding is that the 6.4 is actually a very solid performing manifold. Shra saying, thanks, I'll get in touch with them. Good deal. It has Cook's long tubes and high flow cats with muffler delete. Man, you're already off to a great start. I like it. Very good. By the way, how's it coming through today, guys? Is it choppy? Does it sound good? Are we flowing good? I was running some issues with internet earlier, so I just want to make sure we're doing good. Hey, Triple Thread, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let's see. Thank you very much. He's asking, top 2 tires for street use at the old Laguna Seca track. Mazda. Track day 275 and 305, considering Nitto Tri-5s. 888s would be really good if you can afford them. Any of the summer compound would do very well. Depends on if you're, how aggressive you're going to be with the car. If you're going out there to be able to experience the car in an unhindered environment, I would say Tri-5s would be fantastic. In fact, Tri-5s work really well just in terms of feedback. I've always liked Tri-5s on closed circuit courses, that they give decent feedback and they're forgiving at the limit. If you're coming into a corner a little bit on the hot side, they will progressively understeer. It's a little bit of an annoyance if you're trying to get a really good time out of them. But if you're just getting started, or again, we've got a heavier car here, you're just out there having fun with it, it's a good route to go. They're not overly expensive, and you're gonna do some damage to a set of tires on a closed circuit. 888s obviously would be really good because they're a true, sticky, ultra high performance tire, but that money. So check those out. If you're, let me think about this too. If you're thinking about doing multiple track days and you're just out there goofing off and having fun, then pretty much anything that will fit your rim will be a riot out there. Just know that you won't be setting any lap times, but or any record lap times. Scat 426 is saying good. I like good. Good's great. Great's even better. Michael John saying looks good. Had one pause. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was answering my question about that weird internet thing I was having earlier. Scat 426 got all the thumbs up. I like it. No, 888 is a Toyo tire. Scat 426 beat me to it. Toyo 888, real good car. Tire. But yeah, check those out. Made by Toyo. But let's see. What else was I going to talk about? Oh, I'm finished talking about the Hellcat versus 392 thing, because I will be putting that video together. This is y'all's behind the scenes, sneak peek, early version intro type thing on these videos that I'll put together. But as far as would I recommend the Hellcat over the 392? That has actually been something that's come up a few times, especially for guys that have been on the channel or around the channel for any real length of time. Which do I like better? And did I kind of mark out a little bit and go with the Hellcat versus sticking with the 392? Which one, do I, at this stage of the game, which one do I like more? Do I recommend more? Man, honestly, if I could have one of each in the garage, they both kind of scratch a different itch, so to speak. So I would say that if you are the type that isn't really going to want to mod the car too much, and you're going to be taking the car out and enjoying it, doing a lot of different things with the car, autocross, maybe some open track events every once in a while, maybe the drag strip on occasion, then I would pick up a 6-speed Challenger and just go out and have a freaking ball with the thing. 8-speed would work great too. It's just, if you're gonna be doing a lot of, fun stuff with the car like that, it can be a little bit more fun with a manual transmission. It's really the only reason why I say that. But, and go with the 392. It'll literally do everything. Plus it's a more balanced platform. You don't have the extra 100 pounds sitting over the nose. And that means a ton when you're talking about braking performance and the balance of the car as a whole. Be honest with you, the 392 is a better balanced vehicle overall than the Hellcat is. And believe me when I tell you, 392 will take you from 0 to you're going to jail plenty fast. They're both very fast, as a matter of fact. And in terms of performance stats on the street, it's real hard to differentiate the two. You got to remember that if you're running around on a 10.5-inch setup like I've got on my car, which is basically the same setup that I had on the 392, 0 to 60 in decent DA is still going to be around 3.7, 3.8 for either one of the cars. This thing is a little bit quicker to 60, but not by much. A lot of that has to do with, it's making a lot more power. It's harder to put that power to the ground, whereas the 392 is a lot more, it's a lot easier to drive, I should say. And it's just, you roll into the throttle fairly quickly and you just go through the gears. This thing, you got to be kind of careful, but you're playing a game of catch up with the Hellcat versus the 392. And that's the basic end of the story there for street performance. If we're being sensible here, there's only so much you can do on the street that is within the realm of reason. Something like this is just going to light the tires up, and it's just more of the same, no matter what you're up to with a Hellcat. But at least with a 392, you can use all of the power that you bought, and that's really more the point. And again, that's why I say it's a bit more of a better balanced car all the way around. Not only in terms of actual weight distribution, but in terms of how you can use the car. Oh, hang on. Looks like I missed some stuff. Marcel's saying video quality is good tonight. No buffering either. Very good. Dick Hab's giving the thumbs up. I like it. White Knuckles saying, hey B, to add to the 5.7 header question, do you think he should go cat delete as well? I'm thinking more along the lines of high flows. What do you think? Man, just go with a set of high flow metal substrate catalytic converters. There is absolutely no power advantage to running no catalytic converters on a 5.7 with that setup. I'll take that a step farther. Let's take this girl for example. There was, when it was Rob, Chris, and myself at the drag strip, we were all in more or less street setups. We were looking to see what the difference was between catalytic converters and no catalytic converters. And Chris had his cats off, and then he had the cats on. There was no difference in ET. In fact, I think the car was a little bit quicker in a very similar DA running the catalytic converters. Now, granted, this is a supercharged application. Little bit of a restriction is good because it helps to build cylinder pressure, which is what the supercharger is doing. Whereas NA, you want to be evacuating those cylinders as much as possible, or at least with the best and most proper velocity that you can get. No such thing as back pressure there, so to speak, that you want to be dealing with. But anyway, in this situation, stock cats actually was preferred over having no cats whatsoever. In the 392, the difference in power between running no cats and catalytic converters was negligible to say the least. It made a little bit more torque down low. The number escapes me, but let's say it's 10 pound-feet of torque down low, with that number decreasing as RPM went up, and then it was identical numbers at peak horsepower. A lot of that has to do with the fact that stock camshaft didn't need any more overlap, so the fact that there was no restriction wasn't really, well, there wasn't much of a restriction with the stock cats to begin with anyway. So whatever minor restriction there would have been was basically mitigated at the top end, because the collector effect of that catalytic converter not being there basically only helped at lower RPM, because there's just more time for overlap to take place as opposed to the higher RPM. Just not as much time. So that's a long way to get around saying, or to explain, just get the high flow metal substrate catalytic converters and call it good. Plus, it'll sound better with those cats on there. Believe me when I tell you. Scat 426 saying Hellcats are awesome. I would buy the Green Go in the 6-speed. I'm actually warming up to the manual Hellcats, and I've always liked, well, let me phrase that, didn't always like the manual 392s. There was one car that changed my mind on manual 392s. A customer had brought in a 2013 or 14 392 Challenger, obviously Challenger, with the 6-speed manual transmission. I freaking fell in love with that car. It's one of only 2 cars that I didn't want to give back to the owner. There was that one, and then the 62 D100 that TTS built. You might see it on Instagram. It's a real pretty grayish silver 62 D100. It's got a 6.1 liter and a NAG 1 5-speed with a 390 rear gear. Anyway, that truck, didn't even want to give that thing back. I mean, I loved driving that truck. But that 6-speed manual Challenger 392 was just so much fun. Real easy to heel and toe downshift. Plus, it's heavy, and in corners you can just feel it, setting up as it would go into corners. So they're slow in terms of setting the transition up, setting the weight transition up. But once you work around that and learn how to drive that, they're just so much fun. So yeah, I love them. Let's see, Phantom is asking, is it manageable with a daily driven Hellcat on 275s? Absolutely it is, 100%. You get yourself a decent tire for the back. I mean, all seasons might be a little bit sketchy, only because they're going to light up a lot easier. But, realistically, you get yourself a tire that's even halfway decent, they're not that bad. Just drive the thing around. In fact, the big difference between 275s and the 305s on a 10.5-inch wide wheel is you're not really going to notice it unless you're really getting into the throttle, and the 275s will break loose before the 305s will. But, I mean, it ain't by much. Michael Johnson saying it did not do that prior to the TransTune. Yeah. TransTune's where it's at. Sergi's asking, hi, got the high five. Why Trans Am some people are going crazy over is what's so special about, the ones that I'm talking about. So if you're talking about the TAs that I was talking about, the 73 and 74 Super Duty 455, it's the last of the true large displacement muscle cars that were made by Detroit that were significant and that were true performance engines if compression ratio is being pulled out of the equation. But those cars were amazing in that they had all trick parts on the internals. They ran basically more or less the same ET and quarter mile that their 60s forebears ran. In fact, better than in some cases. But they did so on crap fuel. And, you know, it's the last of the era. And they're also just damn good looking cars. So, you know, you take all that into consideration. And that's why. And really, you know, those disco era Camaros and Trans Ams and, well, they're Mustang too, I guess. But the disco era stuff I kind of like anyway, so. Let's see. Phantom is saying that I live in Florida. I like to run it here a lot. Yep. You think 315 street slicks if I want to run it on the drag strip or for the street or for trip. I wouldn't have a problem running. I don't really like 315s. I like the 305s a lot better than 315s, mainly because the contact patches typically, I don't know. It's the contact patch is typically better for the wheel and tire combinations that you are more than likely going to put on the car. But, you know, for on a 315, I would say just go try 5Rs, and I would run try 5Rs. I mean, I run try 5Rs on this as a street setup, and if I go on road trips, that's the setup that gets driven. So, you know, try 5R at about, you know, 32, 33 PSI is going to put you right where you need to be on the street. No doubt about that. Chaos of the Unicorns is in. I like it. Saying, relaxing Mopar chat, just what I needed after getting stressed the F out watching Game of Thrones tonight. Always love the chat speak. You got it, brother. Man, I have not been keeping up on Game of Thrones. Man, every time I start watching that show, I start liking a character, and that character gets 86'd, man. Keeps bumming me out. But yeah, I hear you, brother. Michael Johnson saying, hi, you skipped my prior comment about the trans tune. I missed it. Just saying that I think once you tune yours, that lively feel might come back to you in the Hellcat. Man, I tell you what, I could put together a trans tune that would be pretty easy. Well, I mean, just it's not that hard to put together a trans tune for one of these things. My thing with this car, it's the trans tune's already really good from the factory with the Hellcat. And really, if you want more, I mean, I could maybe ramp up the percentage driver command torque a little bit in the tune and wake it up, but it's already pretty well awake as it sits. I mean, again, I'm basically just a blip of the throttle away from this thing lighting the tires up at will, and that's with the drag radial. So really the 309 gear is more, man, it's kind of hard to explain, but with the 309 gear, they just seem a little bit livelier just in general. And once you get past that 1-2 yip, and in some cases the 2-3 yip with the 309 gear, then it's pretty much smooth sailing. But yeah, man, I don't know. Again, I'm still on the fence a little bit with that. Let's see, Mr. 76 Aspen. Hey, I like Aspens too. Saying 2006 RT Charger 5.7 with 2010 Eagle 5.7 heads. Worth doing or not? I know I have to run a thicker gasket. Man, I'm not sure that it would be. I'd say have your stock heads ported, better valve seats installed, and call it good. For two reasons. One, the 2010 5.7 heads, the 2010 and up, 5.7 heads, I don't think are going to give you that much more of a performance gain, or at least not the performance gain you're looking for, unless you're planning on hitting it with nitrous or a power adder. And even then, you know, depending on which type of boost you're running with, you're not going to see a huge difference between the two. If it's mine, I will go with what's on the car now before I start putting the other heads on it just yet. I think you might be leaving a lot of power on the table just in porting and reworking of those older heads. Fam is asking, what do you think about used Hellcats in the 30s and low 40s? Think they are reliable? Man, I tell you what, at this stage of the game in April 2019, I would say it would be a tough sell for me, depending on mileage. If the car is in the mid 30s to low 40s. It's probably got a lot of miles on it. And it depends on how well that vehicle was maintained. The thing about the Hellcat, though, you know, if it's just me and you talking, the Hellcat's incredibly durable. If the car has always been on street tires and it's just somebody that's been goofing off with it on the street, on street compound rubber, you're going to be hard pressed to find one that's been hurt. The fusible link is the tire at that point, and I mean the rev limiter kicks on so quickly and so early that I doubt you would have really ever heard it, you know, provided that the car hasn't been just twilighted from, you know, the time you start the engine and then you immediately start beating the hell out of it. But for the most part, it's a real durable combination. So I wouldn't worry so much about it as long as you get it inspected, or if you're very well versed in it, give it a good solid once over, check the thing out. And I'll only recommend that purchase if the car is 100% stock. You get a car with a mid muffler delete, you open up the hood, you see a bunch of just miscellaneous crap underneath the hood. Obviously pulleys are a big no-no at that point. But I would say, especially if you don't know the history of the car, like personally, like intimately, that would be the only caveat to that statement. That being said, anything that would stray away from stock, I would say no, don't go with that. Not a good idea. Let's see, triple threat. Can triple A's be driven or daily driven? Yeah, I don't see any reason why not. They are a soft compound though, so just know that going into the equation. My Charger is a weekend car only. 275s, triple A's are only 210 each. I'll be running dedicated drag radials in the quarter. Yeah, I mean, you could. You know, triple Eight's still a pretty decent tire all the way around, so yeah, I say go for it. Let's see. Sergi's saying, I'm talking about 2002. I must have missed something. Goes on to ask, what's the craziest muscle car that was made in USA before 2002? Would have been the 427 Cobra. And I will call that a muscle car, even though it was a British body with a big block. I owned a Mark III Cobra, and that car was the scariest effing car I'd ever driven, have ever driven. We're talking about a car that in fourth gear on a roll-on would light the tires up or would haze the tires significantly going down the freeway, and the car had a very, very short wheelbase. But yeah, those cars would be the hairiest, scariest from back in the day. Hey, Demonology's checking in. Saying, what up, B? Just landed from Vegas. Muscle cars at the Strip. Man, that would have been a riot. Wish I could have been there with you. Saw some of the video, though, and it looked like a lot of fun, my man. Especially that yellow Roadrunner. Considering that's the one that got away from me. Awesome vids, brother. Good job. Let's see. Phantom saying, if they just change your pulleys, get the extra horsepower. Oh yeah, he's probably talking about just getting a little bit more power out of the Hellcat. Yeah, you can get more power out of it, but again, you got to be careful with the tune. A lot of guys early on, that's really how they were blowing these things up. Let me get something to drink real quick. That's how they were blowing them up, though, is that they would get too aggressive with the tune, and these are guys that just didn't really know what they were up to, how they were tuning it, or anything like that. Of course, I'm always rocking my Topo Chicos. My favorite. So, the main thing is just making sure that you're not getting greedy with the car, with that combination. That's where the problems really get started. So you can pick up a little bit, though. I mean, you're going to go from 10 or 11 pounds of boost. If you do it the right way, get it up around 13, 14 pounds of boost. And yeah, for the most part, you'll be safe. Keep timing fairly conservative, keep fueling fairly conservative. There's no reason to get real aggressive with either one of those parameters because you're not just not going to pick up a ton of power. You know, the difference between a very aggressive tune and one that's going to last indefinitely is maybe 6 horsepower, 8 horsepower, 10 at the most. You'll never notice it and you'll never feel it. It's inconsequential. Hell, at that point, I almost go on record as saying that's within the noise of dyno variants anyway. Michael John's saying, he's hollering back and starting to say, I like the Buick Grand National. There was actually a Grand National at the track on Friday, and it was a true V6 car, not a swap car, small turbo, and nicely sorted Grand National running high 10s at 124 to 125 miles an hour. Real pretty Grand National, and doing what Grand Nationals do best. So it was nice seeing that, by the way. But yeah, it was a real simple build, 66 millimeter turbo, actually 66 with the fixins, and it looked great getting down the track too. Let's see. Hector's saying, that's what I did with my 392. I twilight it right out of the gate with barely 1,000 miles. Man, I hope you're changing the oil often in that thing. Michael Johnson. Oh, yeah, I believe they started in 1987. There was a GNX version, too. Yes, there was. Worth a bunch of money now, by the way. Sergey's asking, why did they make Hellcat Red Eye if the Demon was made already? They made the Red Eye because the technology existed, and the contract that they had with the guy that made the blower and everything else along the lines of, you know, the engine technology, there's another one of those little bastards, the software, everything that they had made for the Demon, that was great that people were buying it. But the reality is that they had to do something else with the hardware and with the software that they had developed. It doesn't do any good to make it for just a small run of cars, especially when you consider that for the amount of money that Dodge was getting for the Demon, it was pretty much a bargain. I mean, you spend about the difference in cost on a Hellcat to get it to run those kind of numbers. So, you know, you're going to need to basically waterfall that technology, whether it's hardware or software, down the line so that you can obviously recoup that cost and generate profits. But that's the reason why they did it. Scat Pack's asking, can you run summer tires in Texas year-round in a Hellcat? I know plenty of guys that do. I don't even think they even bother with what tire it is. They just run, well, most guys down here run their drag radials year-round. Let's see. Fam saying, I'm young, so I'm thinking about getting the 392, even though I have a 19 Civic booster and can run, boosted and can run next to a 392. Thinking about buying the 392, then boosting it because insurance for me is stupid high. Yeah, I would assume that it is. Been there before. I remember those days very well. Oh, fam saying on a Hellcat Plus I can get a Scat Pack in the low 20s. Very true. Oh, Sergey was asking about the TA from 2002. I'm wondering if getting a TA from 2002 or Z28 1994 or Cobra 1997. If it's my money getting spent on one of those cars, I would probably say get the 2002 TA because it'll have an LS in it. So that's what I would do. Mr. 76 saying, thank you for your help, delivering videos. I appreciate that. And guys, we are coming up on 2 hours, so I'm going to check out here pretty soon. I'm going to finish this up, and I got to hit sack because I got to wake up early as hell. So Phonics is in saying, have you raced a C706 at the track this year? Have I? No, I have not. Not yet anyways. But typically the way that race goes is absolutely destroy the thing out of the hole to about the 8th mile. I'm talking about the 392 versus a Z06 now, not the Hellcat. And then after the 8th mile, the vet will start reeling me in like a 2-pound trout. And by the end of the quarter mile, and this holds true, by the way, for heads cam, intake, exhaust, LS3s, which are actually quicker than the Z06. But towards the, or faster, I should say, not necessarily quicker. But towards the end of the pass, it will be a photo finish. It never failed. And the 392 only lost once to a combination like that. And again, these are manual transmission vets versus automatic Challenger with a 392. But the best races ever with that car were against that manual transmission, heads cam intake exhaust C6. Freaking loved those races, especially when I was racing against a guy that really knew how to drive that vet, because it's near and dear to my heart. I mean, I had a C5 Z06 cam, a little bit of head work, a little bit of some love done to the intake manifold, but really, really well sorted vet. So anyway, I hope that answers the question, or at least kind of answered it. Sergey's saying, why people like the 2002 TA so much? It's an awesome car. I mean, it's LS based. Not to mention the fact you're talking about a car that is more or less indestructible if you don't get too dumb with it. So people are going to love on the Trans Am because you can do a ton with it, and you can build it to whatever you want for not that much money, comparatively speaking. I mean, it's still a lot of money, let's be real. I mean, but the fact is that the number itself is just not going to be that high based on the amount of performance that you can get out of that platform. Hey, Phantom, thank you so much, man. I truly appreciate that. Thank you very much. Very kind of you, man. Do appreciate that contribution to the cause. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. Man, I do appreciate that, buddy. Thank you very much. Sergey's saying that he likes more of a muscle car sounding. There ain't nothing wrong with the way a small block sounds. That's plenty muscle. In fact, hell, you put the right exhaust system on that TA, just not the one that does away with the muffler altogether, the attack or whatever. No, bad idea. Just go with something that sounds properly done. It is a solid sounding car. Hector's saying, it's not my fault they were egging me on. You guys were telling me that my car is fat, and I keep telling them I'm not fat, I'm big boned. Hell yeah. Cartman wins. Let's see. Larry's saying join something. Let's see. White Knuckle is asking a good question, saying going from 309 to a 390, how many tenths that would add? Well, kind of depends on the tire setup. You would probably drop, if you've got the right tire setup, you're going to need about a 29-inch tall tire, and you're going to need an ET Street R for sure. No doubt about that. But you would absolutely need to, have something that would absolutely just dead hook. I don't know if I would go 390. I mean, it would feel like a monster, but I would say you might pick up 2 to 3 tenths, but traction and setup is going to be key, and transmission tuning is going to be big time key. And I'm only saying that for a NAG 1. I would not run a 390 on an HP8 or a HP70 or HP9. Well, 90 doesn't count in this, but for a car, I just would not run that setup. I think you'd run out of gear way too quickly with the tire height that we're talking about. Now, if it's a truck, well, it's not going to be a truck, but 392 gears are awesome in trucks because they have a taller tire. Serge is saying, why was the 427 was nuts back in 70s? Because they could. Let's see. Symphonics is asking, how did the C7 Z06s fare versus the Hellcat? It's about the same, actually. The C7 on the tail end of the track will mile an hour about, depending on its state of tune and how the driver is getting the thing down the drag strip. And if it's an automatic versus a manual, it's not the same as the C6 versus the 392, but the automatic in this case, it'll kind of be about the same. Hellcat will be all over it out of the hole, and then mid-track, at least with my car, mid-track, the Vet may start reeling me in a little bit, but I've only raced two, and I don't know if I got the jump on them or what, but I didn't lose either one of those races. I think they ran 11. I think one of them ran an 11.0 and the other one ran a 10.80 on a night where I was running 10.60s. So, or two different nights where I was running 10.60s and 2.70s. Michael Johnson saying, get some rest, B. Yep. Yeah, I'm about to be out, fellas. Got to wake up early. But so you're saying, thank you for the answers. SRT Crazy like, yeah, I like the GSX and test drove a convertible and worked over. It worked over 455 once. It was one of the quickest cars that I've ever been in. Not really into the 70 plus Firebirds, but did like the 67, 69. So absolutely. Man, I just like disco era stuff, man. I just think they're awesome. All that flair. And then, and then Sergio's asking, what's a better muscle car from the 70s or 2000s? Man, it all depends on what flavor ice cream you like on that day. Man, it could go either way. So, guys, with that, I'm going to check out. Thank you all very much for hanging out with me this evening. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the hay. So that is a wrap on this one. Y'all have a